working? Hello, 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 hello. Chat, 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 chat. Are you there? There. Remember we used to try to make fun of Michael Myers or act like Michael Myers was there and we'd go, what the fuck's up, everybody? It's me, Michael Myers. Happy Wednesday. Decided to do a surprise stream, frankly, because I've got a very, very busy week. I've got a lot of preparation for stuff that's happening. One of Jill's kids is going back to Penn State, so we got to move him in tomorrow. This whole week has been a lot of family stuff and a lot of stuff, so why not just do a live stream? Brother, this is the only thing that makes sense for me. I'll do another live stream Saturday, maybe even tomorrow. We might be doing 3 live streams in a week. Either way, I'm going to try to provide value as much as I can for you folks. In the meantime, while I figure out my schedule, I wanted to also announce next week, starting Tuesday, I'm going to be on vacation from Tuesday to like the following Monday. It's about a 6-day trip to the Jersey Shore. So there will be no content from next Tuesday all the way through, the following probably Tuesday, about a week or so. So I just want to get as much in as I can. Let's quick talk before we get to questions. Those of you that are asking questions, we'll get to them in a second. Thank you for them. Those of you that are jumping in, please ask fucking questions. Let's just get a discussion going on Wednesday. It's hump day. I hope you guys are pumped for the rest of the week. And hope you're excited for the weekend because it's coming pretty quick. And then, hopefully you can enjoy yourself on the weekend. The weekend, brother. Hopefully you can enjoy yourself on the weekend. Let's talk about a couple things. All right, number one, look, as you guys know, a good degree of the topics that come out of this channel come from coaching. I am doing a lot less coaching these days and a lot more single session calls and protocol formulation. And as I discussed recently on the last piece of content, one of the common problems is people are on lukewarm, medium end doses of TRT, and there it's hard to control estrogen. I mean, you're a lot likely to crash it or send it a little too low at the tissue level, even though the serum looks relatively okay at 140 a week versus 200. In fact, at 200 milligrams, especially if you're injecting it once a week or you're breaking it up like once every 5th day or something, it's pretty hard to crash estrogen. Now, that doesn't mean you should take 0.5 milligrams of Arimidex or letrozole, any dose, or like 25 milligrams of Romacin. It just means that the micro doses of these drugs don't crash your estrogen. And they end up landing you, usually if you can dial it incorrectly with the correct logic, in a very tight window of estradiol, which supports sexual function. Now, I want to say to people that there are a lot of people that come to me, and we do a fact finding first, right? So I'm trying to figure out what doses they've been on, what they're currently on, what their historical response patterns have been. If they can give me any insight into their understanding of where estradiol might be going in their blood and how sexual function is. And some of these guys have not been dialed in terms of erections, libido, and sensation for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. You'll have guys that come to me like, I've been on TRT for 5 years. There are people that have been on TRT for 10 years, and they're coming to me after 10 years like, yeah, I can't get my libido and erection straight, And some of them, surprisingly to me, they've watched the channel, they've heard some of what I've had to say and my take on how sexual function works in the context of TRT and AHD and estradiol, and they'll be like, what you're saying is new to me, which is surprising. It's surprising to me that it isn't obvious to people that we need a lot of tests, enough tests to support sexual function, but then usually that brings estrogen over a range, not necessarily the Quest or LabCorp range, but a range where then sexual function is inhibited via the estradiol, right? And so I get that the new age internet and the new age TRT sphere is about treating estrogen like Voldemort and that it shall not be named as a problem. But we've got to go back to what we know works when you're having problems. Yeah. Now, secondly, I will say a good degree of the reason that people swear off aromatase inhibitors is because they have problems dialing them in. And that is because they're hard to dial in. Not only is the logic not out there to dial in Arimidex from an algorithmic perspective until I just recently put it out in a video that was done like last Friday. But sometimes dosing Arimidex on a schedule, which is how our brains work, fails people, right? There's a lot of unknowns going on regarding aromatase enzyme inhibition, as well as like the recovery of said aromatase enzyme function. How long Arimidex, aside from the half-life, is actually inhibiting aromatase. So when people get on a schedule of it, sometimes they just end up not able to stay in the zone because there's fluctuations even on the same schedule that end up messing them up. Most of the time, people can be on a schedule with Arimidex, and the best way to start is every 7 days, as I've described. And then you don't change the dose, you increase the frequency to dial it in further if you have to. But there are people that will just never do this because they're getting prescribed from a TRT doc, a doc that does TRT stuff. And that doc says things like, today I got a client that was like, well, we never managed estrogen, even though it was 40 to 45, which for people on lukewarm doses of TRT at 130, 140 is usually too high for erections. I know that sounds crazy. You know, the pro-estrogen people want 50, 55, 60, 65 should be fine. 45 is usually too high. People have ED, dude. So their docs are saying, we'll try to control the estrogen via not giving you HCG, which you might actually need. You do for testicular size and semen health and semen volume and all that stuff. But, you know, also for sexual function to some degree. But they're still over their zone in estradiol at 40 with a 900 test. That's rarely a good ratio. Those are the kind of numbers, by the way, in these lukewarm doses that I see. 900 test, 45, 50, 55 estradiol. It's never going to work, man. It's never going to work unless you're loading lots of Cialis. And by the way, said docs, this is why I'm so insistent. The direction from said docs, this particular doc, which you can extrapolate to many of them, is take more Cialis. It's laziness. The guy doesn't want to deal with managing estrogen with that particular individual and many of these other particular individuals. And it's fucking sad. I get it. They're busy. They've got a lot of patients. They've got a lot of shit to do. Yeah, I've got a lot of clients too. But I take the time to get people dialed in because it matters. Because I want people talking good about me, not bad about me. And I want people happy, not unhappy. So listen, if you're never dialing in on TRT, you really should go and Google, finally tried an AI on TRT. It saved my TRT experience. And go read those threads. What is that noise? Again, once you figure out how to dose them, they're not bad for you. They don't cause joint pain. They don't cause side effects. The guy just took 0.125 milligrams of Arimidex yesterday. No side effects. No, nothing. I just feel great, dude. I just feel great. And the erections and the libido and the sensation are great. I mean, think about 250 tests, which is my dose, and how good sexual function will be if estrogen's controlled then. It's fucking phenomenal. Anyway, I just wanted to clear that up. You're going to be in the purgatory of never dialing in if you keep following the I don't need to manage estrogen camp, and it must not be estrogen, and it must be these other things. It's not. No, it's not. There's a lot of scapegoating out there too. Just pay attention. Pay attention. In the end, leave dogma aside and figure out what works. Please watch the video I just did on Arimidex, on how to dose it correctly. Yeah, I've refined my understanding of that to the point of doing that video, so it's worth watching. Audacity, what's up, brother? Traveling to Japan for 12 days in November, currently on 110 milligrams Cypionate IM every 7 days. You're a hyper responder. Got it. I don't want to bring teeth through customs or risk crashing my teeth. So you're going to be in 12 days? The best you can do if you don't want to bring it is inject like fucking the morning of the flight. If I were you, though, what I would do is instead of 110, figure out what the difference is, 7 and 5 days. If it's 12 days that you're gone and you're normally injecting on a 7-day interval, you probably want to inject the other, what will ultimately be, I don't know, what is that, 85 milligrams or something. Inject all of that, right? So that when you come back, you're approximately where you are normally upon the next 7th day injection. That'd be the best way to approach it. The second way to approach this, which you risk going down substantially in testosterone levels depending on how you peak and where your trough is just inject your 110 day of, but who knows if it's going to fall on that day. Is it going to fall on the day that you leave? You might not. If it falls 3 days prior to when you're leaving, then you're almost definitely going to crash, Run the risk of feeling somewhat crappy when day 7 comes around, day 8, day 9, day 10, day 11, day 12, then you're traveling. It wouldn't be something I'd be interested in doing. So if I were you, I'd load up with more testosterone and then deal with dialing back in when you get back. That'd be my suggestion. Is it optimal? No. Neither is having to take a trip for 12 days where you don't feel like bringing your testosterone. If your test is prescribed, bring it. We'll have no problems. You should have no problems. It's a prescribable drug, and Japan is not China. People forget that going to like Asian countries. Japan is not China. Japan is not a communist country as far as I know. So you should be just fine. Hey, Ryan, is Proviron still worth adding every other day? Sustain on TRT. Yeah, at those doses of TRT, estrogen usually doesn't fall in a beautiful place for perfect sexual function. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. Again, that's kind of the lukewarm middle ground place where it's like things are okay, but you still need Cialis every now and then. You don't have raging libido or raging anything. This is where Proviron can actually be really good. Yeah, because it's a meaningful reduction in estradiol, but not like an AI would induce. It's got some DHT action, which is antagonistic to estrogen, and it does inhibit the aromatase enzymes. The affinity with which and the capacity with which it does that is not studied. It's just not studied, I mean, there's frankly only one study that references mysterolone as an aromatase inhibitor. I think that study is referencing a different study, which it's kind of vague in its language, but it does work as an AI, a very, very mild one. So yeah, and this is actually one of the best contexts to take Proviron, and I've done content on that before. The Ghost. What's up, brother? I've been on TRT for 5 months now, and I feel absolutely fantastic. Wonderful. I don't know if you have a follow-up there, but that's fucking wonderful, bro. What is your protocol? I'm sure people would love to know. The question here is 0.125 or 0.25 in anastrozole once a week. Is that sustainable health-wise? I believe that 0.125 is, and I also believe that 0.25 is in the right context. The context being, if you aromatize so substantially on like 200 a test to where you're pushing 80 picograms per milliliter if you don't manage estradiol with whatever HCG you're dosing, then yes, 0.25 is unlikely to crash that into the teens, right? You're probably going to land, if you do that once every 7 days based on the effective terminal life of a anastrozole, 30, 40, 50, something like that. And then maybe you need to dial in further. I wouldn't increase the dose after 0.25. I would increase the frequency of that 0.25 from every 7 days to every 6 days. It's essentially part of the core algorithm of dialing in this drug sustainably. Regarding the general idea of the sustainability of an anastrozole, I guess relative to health problems or whether or not it's deleterious, we don't have any studies to suggest that it's bad for you, but we do have studies to suggest that if you're taking 32 times what we would take on TRT, as is the big hallmark study of women taking 1 milligram a day, that you could reduce your bone mineral density by a little bit more than a negligible percent. But that's 32 times the anastrozole we would ever take. The same is true. The best example I could give you there is like how people say that drugs like cabergoline or bromocriptine, dopamine D2 receptor agonists, cause valvulopathy. And yes, they can, but it is through a cumulative dose of hundreds of milligrams of cabergoline, for example. If you're taking cabergoline at 0.25 milligrams once or twice a week, that's going to take you, first of all, fucking years to reach that cumulative dose. Years. And secondly, no one needs to even take it that long to achieve that. Anastrozole at 0.25 is actually substantially lower if you compare the two to like a 0.25 milligrams of CAB in relation to its cumulative 300 milligram consumption, at which point you may have valvulopathy. So At the same time, I'll say in summation that there is no piece of scientific literature that shows us there's a negative outcome based on a cumulative amount of anastrozole in a male body in the context of TRT. In fact, not many studies have been done on anastrozole in the context of TRT, and no studies have been done on anastrozole in the context of TRT done correctly. Yeah, dosed correctly. These guys are dosing like idiots in some of them, the few that are out there. So my opinion at this point, therefore, is no, 0.125 especially, and 0.25 depends on the context. If you're crashing the estrogen with any dose, it is likely to be unhealthy. Yeah. In the same way that women who get menopause and don't get on HRT are, their bones deteriorate over time. I mean, I know a 75-year-old woman who has osteoporosis because she didn't get on HRT. Those are the kind of things you're looking at. Again, if the dose is far too high. Crypto Magic, what's up, brother? Hope you're good. Appreciate everything you do for us. Your content is addictive. Best I've found in this space. Well, I am glad. I hope so. And I hope it resonates. That's really what it's about. That and community. That's fun. When we do live streams on Saturdays, I fucking love it, man, because you guys are here talking with me. I don't have much of a social life. I'm really spending a lot of time with my woman and her family, and we have a social life to an extent, but we largely want to go and take trips and have fun by ourselves. Actually, I shouldn't say that. We go to weddings and we go to shit all the time, but I enjoy these streams via you guys asking questions and us all kind of bantering about shit. Chris Byrne, 18 years on TRT. I don't produce it normally. Yes, right. I'm 63 years old and intend to stand it for life. Very awesome. I don't know if you have a question there, but let a brother know. 100 milligrams test D every 7 days is what Crypto Magic is on. Oh, every 5 days for test anything. Got it. That's actually quite good. Would you consider this a low dose? No, I wouldn't consider it a low dose. I feel like trialing a higher dose would be worthwhile. Getting blood tomorrow, see where I'm at. Feel fine. Let's see what they say. I think if sexual function is pretty goddamn good, not lukewarm, but pretty goddamn good, I wouldn't touch it. Yeah. At the same time, if sexual function is pretty goddamn good and you feel energized throughout the whole 5-day period with no crashes, I wouldn't touch it. If you're interested in experimenting with higher doses for the sake of experimenting with higher doses, accept the consequences that you might have to dial in or take an AI, like dial in further at that point, or which would mean reduce estrogen, whether with Proviron, Primabol and Masteron, Arimidex, or Aromacin. Have you ever heard of mumps causing hypogonadism? No, but if you had some sort of testicular size change as a result of that incident, I wouldn't rule it out. Doctors have a very funny way of saying, wait, you have a question? I don't know. So let me look in the scientific literature. Nope, I don't see a paper showing that. It's not true. It could be true. It could be true. It just hasn't been studied. What do I think about guanylate cyclase stimulators to enhance erectile quality? I don't know of any. I mean, I don't think that the stuff in Trimix, those penile vasodilators, well, effectively, they should probably be stimulating that. If you have a particular drug in mind, I can research it. The most effective stuff for enhancing erectile quality, in my opinion, assuming you have a healthy baseline, is Cialis. It is just very effective. But I can tell you one thing. If your baseline is not good in the context of TRT, meaning estrogens causing you to have venous leakage, among other things, then Cialis will be pretty ineffective. Zach has a SHBG of 89 as a natty. That's insane. Dosing 225 once a week. Test anything, no HCG at the moment, no A at the moment. You find guys with high SHBG well in the high dose. I think that SHBG tends not to influence all that much, but you probably want to get that down by taking some Proviron, or Primo or Masteron is going to do that. You've got to get to the bottom of why this SHBG is that high. That's exceptionally high. At the same time, if your free test is not alarmingly low, doesn't seem like it's really making that much of a negative difference. Regarding sexual function at that dose, you're almost definitely going to have to take an AI. So, 0.125 once every 7 days. Only increase the frequency if that's not enough. Don't increase the dose. Viral. I'm not going to say the rest of that. Going to add DHT heptanoate to my TRT. Do you know how I can avoid estradiol crash? It may increase hematocrit. Yes. You would have to have a high enough dose of testosterone, i.e. 200 or above, to not crash it with DHT. But at the same time, this depends on the DHT dose. If your DHT dose is modest, which it should always be, unless you're a biohacker and you want to run some experiment, you shouldn't be dosing loads of DHT. This is why I did the video on reconstituting the sourceless based DHT, which is 7 milligrams per drop, down to 1 milligram per drop. Yeah, that I think is the most intelligent way to take that stuff. So be careful with your DHT doses, the answer, and have enough test. The Ghost of JG. Protocol is 150 a week, split into 2 every Monday and Thursday on test. Okay, I forget the context there, so if you want to super chat and remind me, and if you have a question, we'll figure out how to answer it. It keeps defaulting to top chat, which means I miss a lot of your guys' questions, which I hate. 54-year-old on 200 is sipping a week. Great. Have you taken low doses of NPP? No, but I just got off the phone 2 hours ago with a guy who got erectile dysfunction from NPP. I've been warning people about this for years. There are proponents out there that are saying, no, it doesn't cause erectile dysfunction or anything, even though the bros have known that it does for, 2 decades. So I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think that is a good idea. I just don't. And unless you can find the exact mechanism by which NPP causes sexual dysfunction in men and provably address that by making it so that it doesn't cause sexual dysfunction, like i.e. an androgen displaces dihydrotestosterone at the androgen receptor, therefore you figure out a way to add exogenous DHT and displace the dihydroandrogen. Unless you could figure that out, don't take it. And no one's really figured that out. I haven't deep dived into it because I just don't think I really like nandrolone, but I would stay away from it. Why don't you talk about nootropics? Old content is great. There's a variety of reasons I switched from discussing nootropics. The most primary of them is that I evolved, but at the same time, people use nootropics as a band-aid for what they needed to fix otherwise, and usually it was hormone related. At the same time, because I was so into the neuroscience part of it, I got a lot of sexual dysfunction increase. There was a point in which I wasn't even really doing nootropics anymore because everybody thought their sexual dysfunction was neurological because they think my libido is in my brain and I don't have it. So this must be neurological. I was inundated with sexual function inquiries. That's effectively why I pivoted, because the market dictated I pivot. And it's been my interest. I've been studying erectile physiology and erectile dysfunction for 10 and a half years, 11 years or something. Hormones in general for the duration on and off of my 18 years experience doing research on this stuff. But again, the sexual function inquiries inundated me and they dominated the inquiries at that point. Because again, people thought it was all neurologically based. And it wasn't, a lot of it is hormone based and you can modulate neurotransmitters via hormones, and you should do it that way rather than an unsustainable regimen of taking powdered capsules every day. It just ends up not making sense. You can only fix sexual dysfunction very temporarily via nootropics. It's just by modulating the brain chemistry, for a short period of time, after which you're going to have receptor sensitivity problems, like downregulation of certain receptor function and upregulation of clearance mechanisms and shit like that, like neurotransmitter clearance mechanisms, like cholinesterase would be a good example. So it's just not sustainable. Nootropics are great though. In the context of a otherwise healthy regimen, nootropics are incredible, dude. Like turning your brain on in a way that's different from coffee, but similar in that it's stimulating in a way which like actually gives you more computational power is a really interesting experience. It is somewhat akin to Bradley Cooper in Limitless, but without the side effects usually. And, if controlled in a way that is very awesome, just not as extreme. Not as extreme. What do I think of Cavinson peptides? Never heard of it. Started running 200 milligrams Test-D once per week in a small amount of Arimidex for E2 control. Going to see how it goes. Yeah, Rackpool, just make sure that Arimidex is also once a week to start. You also have to confirm that 200 milligrams once a week, that you need estrogen control for that. If you're doing it every 7 days, you might not, because you might trough low enough to where estrogen falls in a reasonable range throughout the effect duration window, and it doesn't saturate enough at the penile tissue and cause venous leakage and inhibition of dopamine in your brain, which it does, enough to cause problems. It might just be fine. But, the common signs, you have to actually look to your penis to determine what's happening regarding estradiol, as well as back it up with the bloods. Think about what a body does, our bodies do when we have too much estrogen. We're fluffy and watery, generally. The penis is like that too. If there's too much estrogen at that organ, and by the way, estrogen via ERA, ERB receptors in the corpus cavernosa have action at the penis. It's watery and fluffy. Like it's got like some degree of mild edema. Okay. Sensation, usually all right, but not great. You lose erections during sex, and you have to focus on like porn or other wild shit to maintain it. There's no direct connection that stays. It gets severed. It's like signal terminated. At the same time, emotionally, you're a lot more likely to be less masculine and more feminine, more antagonistic, more argumentative, less cool, Hint, the people that are raving about estrogen, a lot of them tend to be seemingly fucking angry about other people on the internet. It might be something to think about. But those are the signs. Tangent. Those are the signs that you got to look for, man. I've heard that low-dose Masteron can help with mood, drive, and libido. Yeah, only if the estrogen is causing those negative things, libido to be lower and your mood and drive to be lower. It does so via blocking estrogen receptors. That's primarily what Masteron does. Yeah. It was actually initially studied for breast cancer for that very reason. Yeah. Am I the only one that feels better when estrogen is in the 60s, 70s? No, you're not the only one. You are a part of a group of people I would consider, based on my data set, anomalies. And then he says, I lose morning erections and drive when I use 0.25 in anastrozole weekly because it brings me down to sub 30. Well, that's why. That's why. On 250, if I went sub 30, I would lose, most of the sexual function. I would still have morning wood, but I wouldn't have libido, Yeah, 30, 35, 40, 45 is pushing it, but that's the range you want to be on. And the lower you go on task, the lower you should be in that range, in my professional opinion. Now 60 and 70s, I don't know where your test is in this particular case, man, and what you're injecting and what the frequency, but if you can tolerate that, you're just part of that anomalous group of men that can, and such people exist. But, to assume, like, if you're one of them and that's why you're in the pro-estrogen camp and you're a talking head on it, to assume that everyone's going to be like that is preposterous. If you just use a little common sense and some pattern recognition on the forums, and if you have a large client base, you recognize that disproportionately people need to be a lot lower than that. I was 75 initially, and then ultimately 90 on my test cycle a couple summers ago before I decided to manage estrogen. After I decided, let me just see where it goes. And right around the 65 mark is where I had full-blown ED. I've had, ED really anything over 55, and shit will still work, but it takes too much effort. It takes too much. It should be natural. Okay. Let me explain what dialed in perfectly is regarding sexual function on TRT. When you start doing even the initiation of foreplay, kissing and touching and all that stuff, within less than a half a minute, you have a fucking full-fledged teenage style erection. Your dick is so fucking sensitive that it's like throbbing and you're just wanting to rub it up against your girl. And the mental side of your libido, yes, you just want to rush right to penetrative sex, but at the same time, you like doing foreplay and you just like fucking love it. And you'll do absolutely anything under the sun. Anything. Within reason, within reason, no crazy shit, but within the stuff that you've got available, you're covering everything, brother. That's generally what it's like. And then while you're having sex, there's no attempt to focus or need to focus on maintaining your erection or climaxing. Estradiol, for again the majority of individuals, it tends to mute climax in a weird way where your brain cannot stay connected to what's going on, so you can't come. You know, guys on TRT, like with estrogen that's not in their range, they just can't come. So you're anomalous. I also think that 0.25, it sounds to me like you're on regular TRT doses here, maybe 200. 0.25 is a lot of anastrozole. Sometimes that does that. In and of itself, it can reduce sexual function, you know, via just blocking the estrogen at the tissues too much. You know, you don't want to blunt force your hormones like that. That's why that drug has to be approached very fucking carefully. You know, you've got to use some degree of if-then logic. I've broken that down on a recent video to dose what is an exceptionally powerful drug that isn't even made for controlling estrogen on TRT. Is zinc at 25 milligrams a day likely to crush E2 on a 100 testy? Not likely, but we don't understand, and I haven't done a whole lot of blood testing on zinc's continuous effects or cumulative effects. Remember, you're inhibiting aromatase with zinc. If you're taking it every day, that is quite different than taking a little bit of anastrozole once every 7 days or 6 or 5 days or 8 days. It's every single day. What I can tell you based on my anecdotal experience is that 50 milligrams of zinc taken every day did crash my estrogen, not to the point of joint pain, but to the point of loss of libido and boner problems. So be careful. No one knows is the answer. And I wish I had like a dial in with zinc strategy for you. I've got one for Arimidex. I take test gel daily. I'm going to add 50 milligrams DHT, or do you think 25 would be better? That's way too high of a dose of DHT. Yeah. Dimorphism, adding omega-3 tocotrienols and citrus bergamot. Okay, all that's good. Listen, DHT is a very fucking powerful drug taken exogenously. I have extensive experience with it, and I've done extensive amounts of content, extensive deep dives into the scientific literature. It is strong. Okay. Its half-life isn't very exceptional, but its downstream effects, even after it's reduced in your blood, are. DHT is a profoundly masculinizing hormone. It is profoundly anti-estrogenic. So these are things that you're going to need to be concerned about when you take it, which would give me the reason to give you caution on those high doses. Again, I have a marked estrogen reduction effect on 7 milligrams every other day, and a pretty tailored, way easier to control estrogen lowering effect on 1 milligram a day on the scrotum of transdermal DHT. So my initial assessment, I would say that my knee-jerk reaction is that's too high of a dose. Appreciate the advice. No problem, Rackpool. The Pro E2 crowd are emotionally attached and always take any criticism personally. Yeah. I mean, I had to respond to Nichols and Man Medicine's thing, but I really wasn't too upset about it. It was more confused. Honestly, like I was on a live stream and one of you guys notified me and I was like, fucking what? Just why? You know, it's like people causing unnecessary problems in life for me. I'm like, for what, dude? Aren't you happy? Aren't you busy? But, you know, when it came to my education and who I was, because I haven't shared all that stuff, you know, some of you guys may have thought, hey, what's Ryan's actual background? Now you know, I got a GED, I joined the military, I fought in the war, I trained the next generation of Cav Scouts, I got out a decorated vet, I started companies that worked with worldwide brands, and I've been legit the whole time, and I need to prove that because it was almost like more so my legitimacy was in question then. But to me, emotionally responding to those folks, that's where I think estradiol has a lot to do with it, right? Because I don't know. They don't really piss me off. They just annoy me. It's like, what is this little fucking thing over here doing this stupid thing? You guys get it. Mav, when I was 40 milligrams prop daily and 25 of Anavar, libido and sensation were great with no A. Yeah, that makes sense. Then when I came off the Anavar, libido went down and sensation. Does that mean I just need to dose more androgen load? No. Well, the myth of the androgen load with estrogen control is just that. You know, you need to find an androgenic threshold that would supports erectile quality continuously in the context of proper estrogen control, or estrogen that falls like in your Goldilocks zone for your physiology, which all of us have, most of us have at least. So thinking about the mechanics of that, Anavar is a chemically derived version of DHT manipulated to be metabolized less to support anabolism and prevent catabolism, while also having a pretty high affinity for sex hormone binding globulins and increasing free hormones, therefore. So it's not that it's not androgenic. That it's not really androgenic. It is profoundly anabolic. That's what it does there. So I think you need to run that experiment again and prove whether the Anavar was actually doing it, or if you had just been taking prop, everything was fine until estrogen caught up. You know what happens when people raise their dose? Say you're on 120 and then you go to 175. For 3 weeks, you have raging erections, great libido, all that stuff. When people take my advice to inject less frequently, but they still don't manage estrogen, and the doses is like kind of up there, they're like, dude, this is the savior. Everything works. 3 weeks goes by, it starts to fail again because estrogen caught up. So it might have been that case. I don't know the details of the timeline of your situation. So, I hope that sufficiently helps you to the best of its potential. Brethren. Hey, brethren. What you doing, man? Ha ha. Ha ha. Guys, we are not overbooked, but we're getting a lot of specifically sexual function enhancement consults. Look, I've had 3 and 6 month coaching up for years, and those are expensive because it takes a lot of my time. And I'm talking with my 3 and 6 month clients every day, every other day. You know what I mean? I'm answering their questions on weekends in some cases, especially if it's an emergency. So, those coaching programs are up there in price, but listen, a lot of people just need to have their historic response patterns analyzed, go through the protocols that they've been on, and then have a targeted assessment and targeted protocols created that actually make sense for their physiology. Also factoring in generally what works in TRT. That's what the TRT sexual function consult is. It's if you don't want long hand holding with a 3 or 6 month coaching cycle, especially if it's out of your budget, just get this consult. It is our literal most popular product on the website besides high dose TRT mastery. Okay. If you book this thing, you and I are on the fact finding call ASAP, except for, of course, next Tuesday I go on vacation. So book soon so we can get on the phone. Even then, so I'll be doing some calls on vacation, just a couple. High dose TRT mastery has literally blown away in terms of first 3 month sales metrics every other product we've ever launched. And I think I understand why. People are just tired of being at 130 and the estrogen's fine, but they don't have good erections or libido, or the estrogen's a little over range and they take a Ribodex and it crashes. And listen, there's a way to dose TRT if TRT's failing you, and it's in this course. Get it at livecortex.com or down in the description of this video. Check. Let's see if there's any questions that I can answer here. The way that you find the androgenic threshold is if estrogen is in a relatively controlled place or low end state, call it 20 to 35 picograms per milliliter. If you can keep it there, you then have to dose testosterone in a stepwise upward fashion until erections are very hard overnight, pretty continuously. 5 to 7 nights a week is a good gauge for you've crossed your androgenic threshold. For me, it's about 1,200 nanograms per deciliter. Below that, even if estrogen's controlled, I'm not going to have nocturnals every night, and the rigidity for sex will be less. So you've got to just experiment with, if you have estrogen in your range, what amount of testosterone gives the erections like a Cialis-like feel, Like my erections for sex on 250 with controlled estrogen are fucking like Cialis-like. Maybe even Trimix-like. I don't even need them to be that ridiculous. And frankly, like Jill's been like, it hurts sometimes. So maybe you don't need 250, right? But my nanograms per deciliter threshold's around 1200. Below which it's just not as great. It's not as great. So again, assuming estrogen is in the right place for you, you've just got to find the amount of androgens your body needs at the right frequency, where the erections are stellar. Whether you're 45, 55, or 65, and I know there's some unscrupulous individuals out there who want to describe all ED as vascular, especially in the context of TRT, which is fucking ridiculous and should be considered malpractice if they're doing that in actual fucking practice. Hormones have everything to do with this. I've got guys in their 60s following my protocols that have ragers. It's pretty rare that you got a fucking vascular problem in your penis at 45 years old. I take 500 milligrams calcium D-glucarate twice a day, 40 milligrams zinc. Looks like once a day, and was taking 400 milligrams of diindole methane. Estrogen's in range on 200 milligrams. Now I'm reading I might have blocked my androgen receptors. Well, nobody really knows about diindole methane. I mean, I think the only published literature we have on its capacity to block androgen receptors is in prostate tissue, right? So can we extrapolate that out to like penile tissue or other tissue? Well, I'd be a little scared that like androgen receptors would be modified negatively in penile tissue. That's why I don't take diindole methane. So I don't take it. I wouldn't take it. There's better ways to manage estrogen that are perfectly healthy. You just have to manipulate the rest of your protocol. You're on 200 milligrams. All that aside, though, if you're functioning good and you're anabolic, you're not really blocking androgen receptors. So maybe your experience will tell you that diindole methane's not doing that. We just don't know, and it's one of those things that I'm not interested in touching because of the prostate androgen receptor blocking. Crypto Magic, 2.5 milligrams Cialis. This is a good dose. Gives you heartburn and reflux. You think this would go away if I stuck with it? Probably, but not entirely. Maybe. Maybe not entirely. Yeah. What's the mechanism for that again? I forget. What is the mechanism for this? It might actually be causing transient lower esophageal sphincter relaxation, which, is one of the things that happens in reflux. It's not always the cause of reflux. I mean, if you've got gut dysbiosis and a bunch of gas-producing archaeobacter in your small intestine, that's going to push gas and stomach contents up, which is going to cause the LES to open and relax. But the LES isn't malfunctional in and of itself. There's a cause of it being malfunctional. Anyway, that was like a fucking scientific tangent around gastroenterology, but I think it's probably just causing transient relaxation of the LES, and it's opening it. That muscle is your anti-reflux barrier effectively. It's one of them. Other shit, as I just described, can go wrong downstream, which even if that thing's integrity is fine, it can go awry. I'd say either stick with it or deal with it. Try to maybe take some D-limonene to reduce what may be some degree of excess acidity at that moment. There's all kinds of things you can take. DGL, chewable DGL. You can take that, probably up. Otherwise, if it continues to do it, you just got to kind of deal with it. Again, some of those strategies are just don't take it. I don't take Cialis at the moment. I haven't taken it in a long time. So you can certainly fucking get your protocol straight where you don't need it, but some people really like it. I liked it, but it did give me a degree of nasal congestion no matter what. All the other side effects went away, but it would give me nasal congestion, lower my blood pressure a little bit, not alarmingly. But I would have a fucking stuffy nose every goddamn next morning that I took it, and I just got tired of that. New Boy Fitz finally got bloods for running 70 a prop a day. Oh, right. Yeah, that's about right, dude. When I was running, 400 of prop a week, and that's when ultimately the estradiol was very up there. Even using 25 milligrams of Emerson a week. Wow. Wondering if that maybe contributed to the overstim. Interestingly enough, no erection issues. Well, what I would say, there's a weird phenomenon here. The number, okay, that number 98 looks very scary. And I don't suggest anyone fucking go to 98 estradiol. But there is a phenomenon here that if you're blocking some conversion to estradiol while you have excessive loads of androgens, the androgens at least to get to do their work, right? This might be part of the discrepancy while people are like, well, I'm sitting at 70 estradiol, my erections work fine. Yeah, well, they may not be in your physiology inhibitory to erectile physiology, or the penis vasculature, because androgens are allowed to do their job and antagonize them at those tissues. It's entirely possible. I don't see it often at 98 picograms per milliliter, but you are reducing some of that conversion. And it's like, even though the serum reads at 90, 98, what's happening at penile tissue? That's really where a lot of this isn't understood. And we could propose that in situations like this, the androgens are allowed to do their work largely uninhibited. It's when the estradiol inhibits their function and causes its own fucking negative action that this stuff becomes problematic. And I'll tell you why I believe you, even though E2 is 98. When I was on cycle, I started taking calcium deglucarate before I started taking aromasin. And within about a day, I had like a nocturnal erection, and then my erections started coming back. It didn't stay that way. It's just a temporary stoppage of that, estradiol, which in and of itself is causing problems. But if you first of all have a ton of DHT, prop is almost like cream in how DHT centric it is. It's so fucking powerful. When I was running large doses of it, I was losing hair. So I think those two things are probably why this is happening. But I'm curious to see where your total test was, man. Either way, regarding estrogen and overstimulation, this is responsible estradiol, I think, for the anxiety, the insomnia, the sleeplessness that happens with people on TRT. Androgens themselves shouldn't cause that. Again, I run 250 a week and do not have sleeplessness, but when I didn't manage the estrogen for the first 2 months, things were fine, and then sexual function started to go south. I was also getting anxiety and some other things, which was solved immediately by the AI. Again, I'll always come back to the example that it for me is very personal, but for I think a lot of other people, if they have experience with this, it'll resonate. If you're witnessing a woman dial in on HRT and her dose of estradiol is too high, the amount of fucking psychiatric and psychological problems she's going to have are vast and disturbing. It's estradiol, man. Those guys were douchebags. Says a lot about your character when you have to specifically call someone out and try to harm his business to make yourself look better. Yeah, or in their opinion, just set the record straight. This is going to sound super cocky, but I honestly think the bottom line with the both of them, and especially Nichols, is he actually knows I'm fucking smarter than him. And I don't like saying shit like that. I know I sound like a total asshole saying that, but I'm an anomaly, dude. This stuff and pattern recognition and deep dives into the literature, and I have a systems view of everything. I've read almost all of the sexual function threads on Reddit, which would assume I've read 1,000 plus. That's true. I have. To me, this isn't difficult to understand. It's not difficult to understand, and it isn't my what's the word? It's not me, my ignorance to what I don't know. It isn't that I haven't studied enough of this that, like I'm on this lower level, and once I reach, 10,000 man hours or something, at that point I'm going to go, shit, what I thought I knew actually isn't true. What I think I know is, I think I know it. It bears out in reality in the context of coaching frequently. So I think it's also confusing to people when they see a guy that behaves kind of like a car salesman and an intellect. We're like, well, you can't be both. We don't see that in the educational orthodoxy. Those guys are so fucking, I don't know how to say without being demeaning, but they're just so limited in their expression that the only thing they know is the strictly intellectual bookworm. And then they know the other guys who are good at talking. But you can't have there's no hybrid in their minds. Such people do exist. In my case, it's through my conscious development of all of those skills because I think I needed it. I thought I needed to develop all of those skills. I'm not okay just being an intellectual, and I'm not okay just being good at sales and talking and marketing. You need to have the whole picture, and I think that confuses people. So they think must be a charlatan. In reality, there are some charlatans in the TRT space. This is absolutely true, and we should all be aware of this, but they don't come from this camp. Yeah, they don't come from this camp. Okay. A lot of bullshitters on the other side. Just the stuff I hear coming out of their mouth, I'm going, this is pure bullshit, and I think they know it's bullshit. I don't want to get into it. I think I'd like for the future to be devoid of this kind of bickering, back and forth publicly on the web. Like, because we have channels where we're trying to like provide value, and it's like, okay, maybe it's entertainment if you watch us feud, but what the fuck for, What the fuck for? As I described on my video, like just give me a call, dude. I tried calling one of those individuals just to make sure we're cool, But I got no answer. I got an email response. My email then was blocked, and then I got a video done about me. It's like, what the fuck are we? What game are we playing? It's fucking girls, bro. I did buy high dose TRT Mastery. Landed on 100 a sip every 4 days with 400 IU. HEG every injection. Wait, didn't you just say you were running the prop? I don't know, bro. Yeah, Germany, it's a tax problem, right? They make us pay tax on every single purchase, and so Germany is one of those hard ones. You can email me, ryan@livecortex.com, and we'll see what we can do. Hey, man. What's up, Josh? Hope you're great. Back after a while, gone. Has your personal approach gone away from cream applied squarely for DHT benefits? No. Every protocol works, man. I love prop. I love cream. I love everything. But as I've described before, and you may not have heard this, my anabolism was pretty abysmal on test cream. Yeah, at the doses that made sense for me without having to control estrogen with an AI, which I didn't want to do at the time, because that's hard on a rapid peak and trough. That's actually very hard to do with fast-acting testosterone. My anabolism was very abysmal. It just wasn't great, So I moved on to a more anabolic dose of test. And I'm getting, my kind of post-cycle physique back, but it's not quite where it was. This is essentially what my physique looks like without a pump at the moment. So the size is coming back and the fullness is coming back, and that's what I wanted to do. And I wasn't achieving that on cream. So, I think cream is amazing. Every ester has their own drawbacks and benefits, And in terms of anabolism, the fast-acting stuff we all know is less good at that. It's just less good at that. Do SSRI users or previous SSRI users require a higher total test number for my first blood test? I could have a low test for over 15 years. There might be something to it. Again, the famous example or parallel that I like to give is like if you've been starving for 6 months, your first cheeseburger back isn't going to cure you of all the fucked up shit that happened to your body when you were starving. So you might need, i.e., continuous DHT or higher loads of DHT for considerable time before things get back to somewhat normal, because DHT very much maintains the vascular function of your penis. So, higher doses are usually warranted, but nothing above 250. Nothing above I mean, you guys don't have to be on cycles. I don't think that is even necessary. Yeah, I already addressed this. Valister. Dude, I'd fucking love to have that as a first name and a last name, brother. Is that your real name, man? You must be the fucking coolest guy on the planet. Ryan, question for AI on test prop at 100 milligrams every third day. How would you approach it? Take it, don't take it. Yeah, if you're having sexual dysfunction, take it, 100%. Yeah, if erections are soft, fluffy, watery, as our bodies would be when we have too much estrogen, soft, fluffy, watery, then yeah, I would take an aromatase inhibitor, definitely. If you look at your peak and trough on day 3, you're troughing, but you're still physiologic. Some may even be super physiologic on day 3. I would still approach taking an AI from an every 7-day perspective and starting at the lowest dose of 0.125 and running 2 iterations of that. So 2 7-day cycles of that. And if that doesn't fix the erectile dysfunction, If it makes it somewhat better but doesn't fix it, you probably need more continuous AI, which at that point I would not increase the dose. I would increase the frequency and move it a stepwise fashion. If you get down to every other day at 0.125 and it still isn't cutting it, then now you start over with 0.25 once every 7 days. And you run that same strategy moving forward. $20 super chat from JNJ. Thank you, bro. Appreciate it a lot. 120 milligrams of Cypionate 1X. Okay, so one injection a week of this. 150 IU of HCG 7 times a week for fertility. Yeah, that's going to make you over-aromatized for sure. Felt solid last week with 0.625. So 0.0625 is what I think you're referring to. Unless you were actually talking about 0.625, which is above 0.5, by the way. 24-hour post-injection, but libido still isn't feral. Drop sip to 100 milligrams, 1 click cream. No. You're convoluting it now. No. First of all, you don't need 150 IU of HCG 7 times a week for fertility. You don't. You won't. You don't. You probably maintain most of your fertility, if not all of your fertility. Well, fertility is effectively binary, so all of your fertility on 100 IU of HCG once a week. It's just a misconception, man. You don't need that much HCG. If you're concerned about it because you have not been able to get your wife pregnant, then this would be the time to be a little concerned about it and run sperm motility, otherwise like semen parameters, so that you can really have an actual, granular look at what's going on there. Maybe look into taking some FSH, recombinant FSH for that, or HMG. But you don't need that much HCG. 120 milligrams of Cypionate once a week may be fine if on day 6 you don't feel crashed. If you do, that is not fine, and you need more test. Then, if you remove a lot of that HCG, you probably, if you're not a super hyper responder, won't have to manage estrogen. If you do, you should take 0.006 milligrams once every 7 days and then move it to every 6 days, every 5th day, every 4th day. If that frequency is not sufficient, don't increase the dose. If you run through all that and you get to every other day on 0.006, then increase the dose to 0.125 and start over on that strategy, on that conditional logic tree. So no, I wouldn't even consider dropping the Cypionate to 100 milligrams and a click of cream. Hybrids are only useful for trouble situations in which you have to be down at 100 milligrams a week of test to keep estrogen at 25 or 30. You don't want to take an AI, but you don't really have enough DHT at that point. Then you use like daily cream or every other day cream just to bump the DHT up and get yourself a peak. And then sexual function ends up being working out really well there. I can't really tell you what I think you should do aside from all those instructions that I gave you here. That's what I would do. Please rewatch my response several times, that you understand how to approach it moving forward, because I think this is not a good protocol, and dialing this in long term is going to be hard. Ideally, if you're taking any anastrozole, you want to be dosing more tests too. Like at least 150 once a week. If on day 6 you still feel good and energized, I'd be crashed on day 6 with 150. So something to keep in mind. All right, boys, I'm going to end the stream. I've got some stuff that I've got to tend to. I've got a meditation session that I've got to do here in a little bit. And I've got some dinner to make and a habanero to eat. I'm trying to work my way all the way. The other day I ate an entire habanero pepper. I've never eaten an entire habanero pepper in my life. I'll eat a jalapeno pepper. I'll eat fucking Blazing Knockout wings. I eat pretty hot shit, but an entire habanero I've never done. So, I've been taking bites, and it was like 3-4 days ago I ate a half of one, and I was like, this ain't that fucking bad. It's hot. They're hot. It's a habanero pepper, man. They're hot, but a half wasn't terrible. So just the other day I ate a whole habanero, and I was in trouble for, 3 to 5 minutes. I was not having a good time, but it wasn't fucking terrible. So I'm going to go eat a half after this because I just like it. My brother, by the way, is on the internet eating a whole Carolina Reaper. Yep. His name is Ron Stango. It's about as fucking Italian as you get. But I don't know if I can find him on YouTube. Carolina Reaper. You guys should watch it. Yeah. His wife, his name is Kristen, Kristen, Stango, Stango. And she's got a channel where he eats a Carolina Reaper. So maybe watch that. Wish me luck. I'm fucking pumped. This week, again, I'm going on a 6-day trip starting next Tuesday. So I don't know if I'll be doing actual video content, maybe not, but I will do more live streams. So just look forward to the notifications, and I'll see you guys there. Again, sexual function consult, high-dose TRT mastery, source list, digital PDFs to show you how sexual function actually works on TRT. This is the products that we provide. They're down in the description of this video. I'd love to see you guys go support us. Kick ass, rock on, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll see you very soon on another live. Peace.